Now let's look into the part of your profile called effective communications and barriers to effective communications. We also call these your do's and your don'ts of communication. The first page is a list of about 10 statements, and these statements are ways in which you would prefer people to communicate with you whenever possible. The second page lists barriers to effective communications and suggests items that you wish people would not do when communicating with you. These 2 pages are really important because when you begin to understand why communication fails, it's very rarely based on the topic that's being discussed. More often, it's because one of you has violated the other's communications preferences, the things that are listed on these 2 pages. To give you a very personal example, when I was first introduced to Insights Discovery, one of our early facilitators recommended that Linda and I spend time on these 2 pages and identify our top 1 or 2 that were the most important to us on each page. The instructions we were given were to tape these pages up where we could both see them in a place where we like to fight. This isn't to suggest that we fought all the time, but when we did, it was usually in the kitchen. So taking the advice of that facilitator, we taped these 4 pages up with our highlighted items from each list onto the kitchen refrigerator. Within a few weeks, we were having an argument and it became a little heated, and one of us ran over to the list, pointed at it, and said, "Look right there, you just did number 4. In the same moment, the other one ran over and said, "That's because you're not doing number 6. Why can't you just do number 6? And I wouldn't have to do number 4. As funny as this sounds, a month or 2 later, we were having another argument in the kitchen, and it ended in the same way with us pointing at the same items on the list. Fast forward 6 months, we did it again, and it ended in the same place. And after maybe 4 or 5 arguments, we stopped at the refrigerator, looked at each other and said, "You know what? We're not arguing about the topic. It's not that we're in disagreement about the topic, it's that we're literally violating each other's items on these lists." Somehow, we were able to look at each other and realize that if we simply paid more attention to the preferences on these lists, we could still disagree about certain things, but it wouldn't become a heated argument. And in that moment, our relationship changed. And the way in which we communicated with each other, especially about difficult topics, changed forever. Now, how does this show up in the workplace? Believe it or not, it's very similar. While it isn't couples in the workplace arguing with each other and arriving at the same conclusion on the lists, in a team environment, we find it extremely valuable to have each individual team member identify their most important do's and don'ts, or sometimes we call it try not to, and then share these 2 statements with each other. Have every member on your team send out an email listing their do's and their don'ts. Then have someone on your team compile them into what we like to call a communications playbook. List every teammate's name and write next to it what to do when communicating with them and what not to do. The ability to access this list each time you're about to communicate with someone on your team is powerful. But what's even more useful is using the communications playbook when you have conflict with someone on your team. When you do, you'll realize almost instantly why your communication with that person is not working as well as it could be. You might find that it's because you were violating their communications preferences. It's easy to lose focus on what matters when someone's communication preferences are different than ours, and when we aren't consciously aware of and paying attention to them at a particular moment.